Back with another episode of Rebel Health Spotlight. I'm your host, Michael. I am excited about this one. I am here with my friend and one of my teachers, uh, Prema McKeever. Prema, thank you
Mhm.
for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I've been excited. In this series of interviews that we're doing, I have brought on a number of my teachers from the various trainings that I've completed in the last 4 or 5 years because this audience has heard me talking about these trainings and what I've been through and what I've gone through, but I hadn't actually brought anybody front and center to speak about it from the other side, to share what the work is like and what 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 people can really expect if they take the dive and start and working on this side of healing, as I often call the two sides, which we're now trying to blur the lines between. But um, we usually start these where I just ask somebody kind of who you are and what you're currently doing in the world. So you can start with what your work currently is, and then I'm going to backtrack a little bit and figure out how we got there.
Sure. Yes, my name is Prema, obviously. I'm a somatic therapist. I live in Vancouver, Canada. And what I do, I'm part of the faculty for the Biodynamic Breathwork and Trauma Release Institute. That's how we got to meet. And then I'm also a facilitator of a process called Path of Love, which is a transformational 7-day full-on transformational process that does a lot of work around trauma healing. And I'm also heavily involved in the somatic experiencing community here in Vancouver.
Great. And somatic experiencing, for those who don't know, is another modality for it's a probably the biggest or most well-known modality for trauma healing, founded by Peter Levine, who's one of the I don't know, I don't even need to use the Mount Rushmore equivalent because of the history there, but it's he's on the board for most well-known trauma authors and experts and pioneers.
Yes,
So um
yes.
but that's not how you started. And so I'm
No.
curious, where'd you get started in overall wellness?
Mhm. Sure. Yeah, it actually started, I was quite young. I was 19 or 20 when I started
Wow.
actually as a body worker. I started training in shiatsu and loved it and studied shiatsu and orthobionomy and a few other body work modalities. But then I quickly realized that no, my own body is not going to be able to handle this when I'm 50 years
Mm.
old or something. And so I went on to acupuncture school. And I finished that and graduated as an acupuncturist when I was in my mid 20s in San Francisco. And then I had a practice in San Francisco for a long time, and then Dallas, Texas, where I used to live. And then from there, I got exposed to a lot of other different modalities, including somatic experiencing and Hakomi, which is something else I've trained in, a beautiful body oriented way of psychotherapy. And things just kept evolving from there based on what I was finding out for myself. It was really, I would explore something and notice the difference in me and then get very curious about it and decide to follow that path.
Interesting. Hakomi is beautiful. Gabor had
Yes.
during my compassionate inquiry training, he had a couple workshops with, I don't remember who, but somebody from Hakomi came on and did workshops for the compassionate inquiry, like students. And then they asked for volunteers to do film sessions for some of their trainees. So I volunteered to get some free
Oh,
sessions to have them filmed to be used as part of the training. It was one of the trainers that did the sessions. And
yeah.
it's like a mindfulness based form of therapy, kind of was my experience of it, but it
Yeah.
was really sweet, and it unfolded in a very like gentle, natural way, the sessions. It
Mhm.
was very unforced is my experience of it. But I'm curious, acupuncture, body work, those
Mhm.
are hands on,
Mhm.
and most people, I know that there are trauma related, emotional related, mental related benefits of having body work and doing acupuncture. But
Mhm.
most people, at least in the States, go see a body worker or an acupuncturist because something physically hurts. Usually they have some
Yes.
kind of pain or they have some kind of physical health problem. Whereas somatic
Yes.
experiencing and Hakomi, uh, those are trauma therapies that use speaking and body awareness and somatic therapy. So I'm curious, did you make that jump because you were doing that work and found it super transformational? And then you were like, well, I want to do this. I want to teach this.
Mhm.
Because that's what happened to me.
Yeah, it's similar to that. What's interesting is that I was working with trauma the whole time as an acupuncturist, but I didn't know it. Because I was working with chronic health conditions, syndromal conditions, things like that. And at that time, it wasn't understood the link between particularly early childhood experiences that left a dysregulation in the nervous system, and how that then impacts as we grow up and influences our health later on in life. And so I was working with all of these type of conditions, chronic pain, all of it, not knowing that there was a trauma component to it. And it wasn't until probably, gosh, a good 10 years into my practice, because in my training, in my master's program, it was the word trauma, I don't think was ever mentioned except for,
Mhm.
whiplash. This is what you
Yeah.
do when somebody
I
walks
have a
in with
master's in
whiplash.
physiology, and it was only mentioned as far as like you get hit by a car.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, and then about 10 years into my practice, I started learning about SE and Hakomi and got introduced to trauma. And then I was like, okay, what is this exactly? But I still didn't quite know because the connection wasn't really explained. Because then it was seen as it's this mental thing. It's when you have
Mhm.
depression or
Yeah.
anxiety. So still the link wasn't completely understood at that time. And then it got connected into breathwork with BBTRS, and that's when the link started to become more obvious. Started diving more into it. And then in the SE training, really made it clear. And what really made the difference was my own body and uncovering the layers of freeze, the layers of disconnection that was in my own system that I had never even really been aware of because it was just the way I thought I was. And so, with that work, and then with the work of Path of Love, which brought it much more into the emotional component for me, I really started to see what was happening in myself, and that dramatically changed then how I work with people.
Beautiful. My experience has been quite similar. Well, you came from acupuncture and body work.
Hmm.
Mine's in exercise physiology. I was an
Hmm.
overeducated fitness trainer. I worked with athletes, but then I left to work with
Yeah.
deconditioned people to like help them be able to, recover after surgery and get back to like
Hmm.
being able to walk upstairs and things. But I also
Hmm.
was never trained about trauma at all. And then I got
Hmm.
into functional medicine and nutrition and all of this, and I still didn't understand at all. And I
Hmm.
started to go through the work like you myself, but I also didn't piece it together right away. Like
Yeah.
I started to believe that my anxiety, that I had anxiety. That's a strange realization when you figure that out at like 35, that like, oh, not everybody's
Yes.
like this. And this isn't like my normal state of, this isn't normal. I guess, well, I don't know why you use the word normal, but that this is a thing. And I've been doing
Yes.
this, and this to make it so I'm not nervous all the time. Realizing that at 35 is
Hmm.
cool. And then I started to believe that trauma could play a role in that.
Hmm.
But it
Hmm.
never occurred to me that some of the clients I was working with who have autoimmune diseases, who have chronic pain
Yes.
conditions, who have fibromyalgia, who have all of these kind of health problems that don't report anxiety, that don't
Hmm.
report to me depression, or at least they're not seeing me for that. They're seeing me for the other
Hmm.
things because we compartmentalize these two separate
Yes.
things. I didn't put it together either until my wife got really sick. She has multiple autoimmune conditions, and we went down
Oh,
the
okay.
we're trying everything and it's not working. And then I found Gabor's books, Dr. Gabor Mate, The Body Says No, I
Yeah.
read. And I was like,
Yes, that's a great
oh
book.
shit,
Yes. Yes.
this also does this. And so you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
dysregulated nervous system from
Hmm.
childhood trauma. So I'm curious, that seems like that's something this audience knows about, dysregulation
Hmm.
of the nervous system, and understands how that can keep the immune system in like a activated state or whatever. So when that started to overlap for you, and you started to realize like, oh wow, this is all related and there's no two sides of this, that what we would consider emotional
Hmm.
trauma is absolutely linked to physiological dysfunctions and problems, which in
Yes.
acupuncture probably shows up kind of like blocked energy channels
Yeah.
or
Heart blood, heart chi, Shen
yeah.
disturbances. Yes.
So
Liver
when
chi
you started to
stagnation.
mix all these together, when you started to work with people more with the trauma side of things,
Yeah.
what kind
Hmm.
of like physical differences have you seen in yourself or in other people as you've been doing this work or teaching this work that someone who's not down the rabbit hole yet might not think about, like, oh, if I go do trauma work or somatic therapy, or I go to an emotion-based retreat, or I find a place where I'm able to express grief that I've held my whole life, or these kind of things, aside from the mental side, like just the physical differences in their body or in their way their body works or functions. What have you seen?
Yeah. So I'll use myself as an example. I appreciate you saying when you're mid-30s discovering you have anxiety and not knowing that was a thing. I remember in my late 20s, I was already an acupuncturist, and I was on a walk with a good friend of mine who was a 30-year plus PhD psychotherapist. And I remember describing to him, like, yeah, I kind of always feel like I'm a little disconnected from my body, that I'm like about a foot or two behind me or kind of floating. I was describing classic dissociation. I lived in a functional freeze state. His response was to eat more carbs so I could be more grounded. This was somebody with 30 years of experience. Now, granted, this was also in the late 90s, so before a lot of this information came about.
Mhm.
But and obviously, as somebody who went to acupuncture school, was an acupuncturist, I was getting acupuncture regularly. It was a big part of my life, but still, a lot of times chronic headaches would persist at times in my life, and my very low tolerance for stress, a little bit of stress. I had a very narrow, what we call window of tolerance. A little bit of stress could either send me into anxiety or put me into periods of depression or further freeze. Um, Feelings of not feeling really alive or present, like I felt was possible, just feeling like something was always off. And then when I started to discover breath work and BBTRS, it's like I started to really come into my body in a way I had never experienced. A lot of the tension, the chronic feelings of tension in my back and neck and shoulders finally went away. Acupuncture had never been able to get it to really, it would go away for periods of time and
Mhm.
come back, go away and come back, that little dance. When I got heavily involved with Path of Love and got more into the emotional components that are there, really working with a lot of the inner child work, younger issues around what happened in my family of origin, the emotional impact of all that, so much more expansion starts to come in, more aliveness, more ability to meet life, an ability to feel not like I have to keep my part of my heart closed, that I can be open and also feel safe. Things like this. So definitely improvements in physical health, particularly from the chronic conditions I used to deal with all the time. Haven't had a episode of depression in years. Haven't felt anxious without reason in years. So my window of tolerance has greatly expanded. When I'm able to have the energy to meet life and its demands has greatly expanded. And then on the emotional level, just feeling like I'm connected and that I belong, which is huge. I think that is one of the big antidotes to trauma, is to feel connected and that the belong in life, and that we're here together. We're really here together, and this love of people and love of myself. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. And that last bit, I bet that that is not coincidence that you do so much work in community and group settings too.
Mhm.
That that you carry that feeling of connection. And we were talking before we went on air about how I was talking about it in reference to a training I'm currently in with Francis Weller about grief work, and that grief rituals and containers have always been part of culture, and that that's how grief has been held. But it goes further than that, that trauma healing and just healing in general, uh, which can be being seen by a group of people for who you are and accepted. Like, we're not talking about like really elaborate, it can get elaborate, but like
Mhm.
just being in a group of people and being seen and accepted in and of itself has a healing component to it. And
Yeah.
these communities were always, these groups have always been part of like the human experience. And
Yeah.
Would you say that
Yeah,
the absence of that in our lives as a whole is having a lot more effect than people would realize?
I believe so. You know, if we think about it, um, in trauma, we weren't hurt by trees. You know, we were hurt by other people. And our healing, I think a fundamental part of our healing has to come through other people. Walks in nature are wonderful. They're beautiful. They can help us calm down and self regulate, but they don't get to a core piece of the wound, which is a sense that somehow I'm not safe with other people or people aren't safe. You know, in psychotherapy, we talk about the missing experience. What is it that wasn't there that needs to be there? And so, particularly when we're looking at childhood trauma, things that happened when we were younger, what was missing, what attunement wasn't there, what sense of being seen, what sense of being heard, valued, loved, understood, all of that. We need other people for that. And so, with group work, that's the magic of group work. I work one on one with people, but what we can accomplish in a group setting in 1 week far outstrips what will happen over months and months and months of therapy, because there's a special power in when groups of people come together to heal, and that one person's breakthrough then becomes your breakthrough, and this learning and new experiences and this opening up, and you get to have those missing experiences that deeply, it's not a mental thing, those missing experiences. It's not like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing and I understand it on a mental level. Our bodies and our nervous systems resonate, and when we're able to have that deep sense of safety and connection with other people, that imprints itself in us and creates patterns then for new types of relationships we can go out and create outside of the group room. So I think, like you're saying, when you're talking about grief rituals and the community coming together, I think we are meant to heal in communities. We're meant to heal in circles. To do it alone, I think, is a very kind of Western idea. And
Yeah,
you can do it some part. I mean, yeah, we have individual psychotherapy. Of course, it can help. But I think
yeah.
that really the missing piece is group work.
I thank you. It's you speak on it much more eloquently than I can right now, but my experience with those settings has changed my life profoundly. Like some of the trainings I've been through in the last 5 years are taught in retreat settings, like for a week, and the things that are capable or possible there aren't. Like Gabor
Yeah,
always says in CI that damage that was done in relation needs to be healed in relation. That like
exactly.
you can do a lot of work on yourself. You can lead a lot of. I danced
Mhm,
around the outside of this work for a long time before I really dove into it. I read all the books. I listened to podcasts. I would listen to
mhm,
whatever. I could map it all
mhm.
out. I understood the
Yeah.
concepts. Like I would try this practice, I dabble in that practice. I never sat down with someone directly. I never went to a group thing. I didn't go to a retreat. And then I only made it this far. Like
Yeah.
I mentally started
Yeah.
to understand a lot more things about
Which has its
myself and what
benefits.
happened, which does,
Yeah,
but
it does.
there's a line, like it only goes so far, like that only goes so
Yeah.
far. And then the next step would be working one on one with someone where you can repair
Mhm.
some of that relational damage. But yeah, nothing compares to those groups. Like
Yeah.
even the
Yeah.
one with BBTRS in Poland, like halfway through the week, I saw the people there. Most of them were like completely different people by Wednesday.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and like the light was different and the way they carried themselves was
Mm.
different. So this is something that we're trying to describe that isn't like, oh, they understood themselves better or they
Mhm.
felt, what it's this way of like my body was different when I came home from there. So for people that
Yes.
are looking to solve these complex chronic illnesses that we're seeing so much more of today,
Mhm.
would you say that exploring this side of work is not only a good addition to whatever they're doing with diet, supplements, all those kind of
Mhm.
things, but an essential component of it?
Yeah, whether that's a 7-day, an intensive retreat somewhere, or being part of some sort of ongoing weekly support group. I mean, there's so many different forms that this can take. but being in an environment with other people, having shared experiences, feeling that support, feeling that you're part of something, is so important. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the first person to say this. We have an epidemic of disconnection,
Yeah.
and that impacts us not only on our mental level, but obviously very much on a physical level, on a nervous system level too. We're not built for isolation. We're not really built for disconnection. And
No.
we flourish when we can have safe connection.
Yeah. It's very true. And I was part of a film series that we went all over the world and recorded in places where people have the least chronic disease, the longest lifespans.
Mm,
We don't own the copyright to the word that's usually used for those places, so we couldn't use the word. But
okay.
we came to Italy and to Sardinia, and
Oh,
I
yes.
didn't, but the filmmakers went to Sardinia, and they went to Sardinia, they went to a couple Greek islands, they went to Okinawa,
Yeah.
and a lot of people in the US and North America wanted to know, like, what do these people eat? What kind of
Hmm.
workouts do they do?
Hmm.
What other health
Yeah.
practices do they do? What kind of biohacking do they do? Like all
Hmm.
that kind of bullshit. And
Hmm.
the only main themes that crossed all the different places, they all ate different food from each other. So there was no like same food.
Hmm.
None of them did structured formal exercise. There was no like
Hmm.
fitness culture in any of those places. Um, which like
I
even
love it.
explaining it
I
to some
love
of the
it.
older folks in Italy, like this guy, he showed up for the interview 104 years old on a bicycle in Sardinia. And then they
Oh,
tried to
wow.
ask him if he's ever been to a gym, and he was like, "What is that?" So, like, go to a place specifically with the intention of exercising? Like, no, I just my life. So, the one common theme, there are two common themes that came up all the time were the community and connection aspect. Like in
Mm-hmm.
Greece, our filmmakers got invited to like little community block parties that were going on till like 2 in the morning, 4 nights a week in this one town. And there'd be 90-year-old people and 7-year-old people dancing at midnight and drinking wine. Now, all of your
Yeah.
health gurus in the US would tell you that you're up at midnight
You,
drinking wine. That's like a
yeah.
terrible thing, and you're going to
It's
be
going to
really sick
wreck
all
your
the time.
sleep.
Terrible. Yeah, your circadian rhythms will be off and your health will go to shit. And these people are living to be 105, and not just living to be that age. Like now I live in Italy and I see people in the streets that are 95 going up and down hills, that are walking, that are self-sufficient. And people here smoke more than Americans smoke. They stay up
Yes.
later. They drink more
Yes.
wine.
Hmm.
But there's a level of community and connection that exists still in these cultures more.
Yeah.
It's going
Yeah.
away, but it
It is,
exists a
sadly.
lot more than, especially in the more rural traditional places, it
Mhm.
still exists a ton. And that was the only thing that unified all the places, was that there still was a
Yeah.
very strong aspect of community and connection amongst neighbors, amongst villages,
Mhm.
and they all supported each other, they all helped each other. And that was something the people being interviewed, the older folks, they would talk about, like,
Mhm.
lean
Mhm.
on your neighbors, don't hold grudges, don't be angry about things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Like those were the things that came up. And the health
Yeah.
industry people wanted to know, like, the diet, the supplement,
Yeah.
like supplements, they don't even know what supplements are. Like it's
Yeah. How
so
can I
I
pop it
think,
into a bottle? Hmm.
yeah, how can I take it in
And
a pill
sell
so
it?
I can get to work faster, so I can
Yeah.
work 17 hours a day and not know my neighbors'
Yeah.
names? So
Yes.
yes, the community aspect is massive for all forms of healing. So if people would like to find
Mhm.
you and your work and everything you just named,
Mhm.
uh, can you just share with them where they might be able to find some of these things?
Sure. Yeah.
We'll link
My
it all
website
below too.
is okay. Yeah. My website is my name, Prema McKeever. There's some blogs on there, and then I have a YouTube channel as well that has some videos, some guided breathwork sessions, videos about resilience, different things like that. And so, and on my website, you can also see the schedule of events, trainings that are coming up, and Path of Loves that are coming up as well.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
we'll link that down below. I'm actually taking a train to Rome in the morning tomorrow, and I'll be
Wow.
watching some of your training videos on the train.
Oh,
So I
ah,
will see
fun.
you again in about 9 hours. I think I'm watching your
Okay.
Reiki and character style videos tomorrow. So,
Oh, great.
um,
Great.
yeah.
Enjoy.
So If just one last thing before we go, if you could share, and I usually give guests a heads up on this, and I didn't give you a heads up, so I'm putting you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
One
Okay.
little either needle moving practice or like something somebody could be more mindful of, or a practice they could start trying, or something they could do
Mm.
um, from any aspect of the work that you do or things that you share with clients
Yeah.
or anything, what would you say would be one thing that somebody could start to try to do
Mm.
to incorporate into their life that would move a needle for them, possibly?
Yeah, I would say even something like 5 minutes of breath work a day, meaning 5 minutes of intentionally paying attention to your body, dropping down to the level of body sensation, and working with your breath. And I have short breath work practices on my YouTube channel that people can go to check out. But even those can start to work with increasing our vagal tone, helping improve our connection to our body, bring more ventral vagal on board, lower levels of stress. Which, when we talk about community, what is all the benefits we get from community? If we want to take this, we have this word community that we've
Mhm.
talked about. What happens physiologically with that? We're in more ventral vagal. We're increasing vagal tone. We're improving levels of, we're decreasing levels of stress, all these sort of things. And so you can do this in small practices in your home by working with your physiology. So that's what I would say, 5 to 10 minutes of breath work a day.
Perfect. Yeah, go check out the
Mhm,
videos. We'll link it down below this one so you guys
mhm,
can find it really easy. So thank you so much, Prema. I very much
mhm.
enjoy any time that we're able to chat or connect, and
Yeah.
it's been a gift to learn from you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Michael. I was great talking to you too and being here.